The Supreme Court has reversed Roe v. Wade. We're going to talk about the impact of that decision, the protests all over the country, what Joe Biden said about abortion back in 2006. Hint, hint, it's very different than what he says right now. It's important to recognize that before 1973, when the Roe decision was handed down, abortion was available to women in about 70% of the population. It did not, as its proponents say, legalize abortion. Abortion was already legal in a great deal of states, including the most populous states, New York and California. What Roe v. Wade did is strike down every single anti-abortion law in all the states that had them. Again, prior to 1973, this issue was left to the voters and to the states, where, in my opinion, the founding fathers intended for issues like that to be left. There's Article 1, Section 8, outlines about 18 or so duties, obligations, responsibilities of the federal government. You will not find abortion there. Also, regarding third trimester abortions, during the 2020 campaign, Bernie Sanders was asked during the debate, at what point does he think an abortion has gone too far? At what point would he think an abortion should be illegal? And he wouldn't respond. In other words, up to the moment of birth, as far as Bernie Sanders is concerned, and that is the position of many people in this party. However, 80% of Americans disagree with Mr. Sanders and believe that third trimester abortions should be outlawed. Now, it's important to also understand this. Biden has a very different position on abortion than he had in 2006. On Friday, Biden said, quote, "The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk." He said that 3 Supreme Court justices appointed by Donald Trump were, quote, "the core," close quote, of the decision to, quote, "upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country." He also said it is, quote, "a realization of an extreme ideology and a tragic error by the Supreme Court, jeopardizing the health of millions of women. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls who are forced to bear their rapist child or the child of consequence," end of quote. He also said this, that the decision casts a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, end of quote. Now, back in 2006, Biden had a very different opinion of abortion. Here's what he said back then.
Abortion. Where do you stand, and how will you face that issue as a candidate?
It's going to be very difficult. I do not view abortion as a choice and a right. I think it's always a tragedy, and I think that it should be rare and safe. And I think we should be focusing on how to limit the number of abortions, and there ought to be able to have a common ground and consensus as to do that.
I do not view abortion as a right. That's just 16 years ago.
I think the vast majority of the American people think that can be done. But unfortunately, we're put in a position you either eliminate abortions under all circumstance or it's, quote, abortion on demand. The fact of the matter is I've never known of a woman having an abortion and say, by the way, I feel like having an abortion. It's always a tragic decision made, always a difficult decision. And I think we should focus on how to deal with women not wanting abortions. I might point out, when there was economic prosperity and growth, the number of abortions went down by 300,000, if I'm not mistaken, during the Clinton administration. And they've gone up during the Bush administration, in large part because of the economic stress and pressure placed on people who become pregnant. And so we should be focusing on how to make it more hospitable for women to want to carry a child to term than we should be on eliminating under any circumstances the woman to be able to make that choice.
Very different position than the one he just articulated on Friday. Fear of out-of-control inflation is hammering the stock market. The S&P 500 having its worst start to the year since World War II. So, not only are your savings worth less, you now have less of your savings. Now might be a good time for you to diversify into gold, the most stable asset in the history of the world. And Birch Gold is a company I trust to help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold and silver. And that's right. Not only will Birch Gold help you fortify your savings with precious metals, they'll help you do it in a tax-sheltered account. So go to LarryForGold.com, to get a free, zero obligation info kit on holding gold in a tax sheltered account. Amazon stock down 37% in the last half of the year, Tesla down 40%, and cryptos have been slammed. And many fear the hawkish moves by the Fed could stall the economy. What's your plan? Go to LarryForGold.com and get your free, no obligation info kit on gold from Birch Gold. They are the precious metals professionals. I trust them enough to buy from them. Go to LarryForGold.com and secure your savings right now. Now, there is an article in the LA Times. It's about Harry Blackmun. Harry Blackmun is the Supreme Court justice who wrote the decision. The article is entitled Roe Ruling More Than Its Author Intended. And the point of the article is that Harry Blackmun had no blooming idea that Roe v. Wade would be interpreted as giving a woman a right to an abortion, let alone up to and including the third trimester. Blackmun used to be a lawyer with the Mayo Clinic. He was their general counsel. He had a great respect for doctors. He wanted doctors to be able to determine, based upon a number of factors, which we'll come to in a second, whether or not, in the doctor's view, an abortion is medically necessary. Not a woman having a right to demand an abortion, let alone, again, up to and including the third trimester. Here's what the article said in part. And these were about the papers private papers of Harry Blackmun. They were released years after he died. Again, this article was in 2003. The decision came down in 1973. And he said that he wanted to write a very narrow ruling that would reform abortion laws, not repeal them. In fact, on the day of the decision, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Warren Burger, said, quote, "Plainly, the court today rejects any claim that the Constitution requires abortion on demand." Let me read that again. Plainly, the court today rejects any claim that the Constitution requires abortion on demand. But that's exactly how the decision was interpreted. The opposite of what the Chief Justice thought it would do, and certainly nothing like what the person who wrote the decision, Harry Blackmun, thought would happen. In fact, Blackmun wanted to issue a news release to accompany the decision. Now, I'm a lawyer, and I read a lot of cases by the Supreme Court. I've never heard of a justice who wrote the decision issuing a press release explaining exactly how the case is to be interpreted. The idea is you write a case and people read it and they'll know how it's supposed to be interpreted. But he feared that it was going to be interpreted the wrong way, so he had to be talked out of releasing a press release. And here's what the release was going to say. It was never issued. The court is not giving women an absolute right to abortion, nor is the decision saying that the Constitution compels abortion on demand, end of quote. That's the statement he was going to issue. He was talked out of it, never issued it. The point is he had no idea that the decision was going to be interpreted the way it has been, which is that a woman has a right to demand an abortion up to and including the third trimester. Blackmun said that abortion, quote, must be left to the medical judgment of the pregnant woman's attending physician. I repeat, must be left to the medical judgment of the pregnant woman's attending physician, so long as doctors were willing to perform abortions. In an accompanying case the same day, he went even further and said, doctors may consider, quote, all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patient. Again, this would be a doctor's decision, not the woman's decision. In a private conference, 7 justices agreed that the law under consideration was extreme, but that doctors must be permitted to act when there were, quote, health problems, close quote. Blackmun, according to the article, had disdain for feminists who said women deserve control over their own body. Quote, there is no absolute right to do with one's body what you like. But that's exactly how the decision was interpreted. Blackmun's opinion, by the way, ends the following way. The decision vindicates the right of the physician to administer medical treatment according to his professional judgment. The abortion decision is in its aspects inherently and primarily a medical decision. If an individual practitioner abuses the privilege of exercising proper medical judgment, the usual remedies, judicial and intraprofessional, are available, end of quote. By the way, the day the decision came down, the Chief Justice filed a concurring opinion and predicted that the ruling would, quote, not have sweeping consequences, close quote. As a sign, one more time, that the ruling was supposed to be narrow, if you look at the news accounts when the decision was handed down, it was no big deal. In fact, that day, LBJ died, former president, and that became the bigger story than the Roe v. Wade decision. So this interpretation, subsequent interpretation, that the Roe decision allows a woman to demand abortion on demand up to and including the third trimester, was not envisioned by the author of the decision, was not envisioned by the Supreme Court at the time, Warren Burger. Maxine Waters, the woman who said that surround Donald Trump's cabinet members. Let them know they're not welcome anymore. Get in their faces. Remember that?
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
Here's what she said standing in front of the Supreme Court.
See this turnout here? You ain't seen nothing yet. Women are going to control their bodies no matter how they try and stop us. The hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. Women will be in control of their bodies. And if they think black women are intimidated or afraid, they got another thought coming.
To hell with them. We will defy them. This is the same woman who went absolutely ballistic over January 6th, calling it an insurrection. What do you call saying to hell with the Supreme Court? We will defy them. But none dare call it an insurrection. AOC suggested that Supreme Court justices during their confirmation hearings, when asked about Roe v. Wade because they didn't give an answer that they were going to overturn it, that they technically lied under oath. And she suggests that they should be impeached. I kid you not.
You think the House Judiciary Committee should begin the process of an investigation there?
If we allow Supreme Court nominees to lie under oath and secure lifetime appointments to the highest court of the land and then issue without basis, if you read these opinions, issue without basis.
By the way, she's referring to the Supreme Court nominees being asked, are they going to overturn Roe v. Wade? And none of them said, yes, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade. None of them said, no, I won't overturn Roe v. Wade. All of them said, we're going to pay close attention to precedent. We respect precedent. One overturns precedent only with great concern, great care, great caution. They said stuff like that. Nobody said, I am not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So nobody lied under oath. And by the way, even if they said, I'm not going to overturn Roe v. Wade, you can't change your mind?
Rulings that deeply undermine the human and civil rights of the majority of Americans, we must see that through. There must be consequences for such a deeply destabilizing action and hostile takeover of our democratic institutions.
Now, Michael Sussman, the lawyer of Hillary, who lied to the federal agent and said he was acting on his own behalf, that he was not acting on the part of anybody else, while billing Hillary for the meeting, he lied to a federal agent and was found not guilty. But I guess some lies are more lies than others.
To allow that to stand is to allow it to happen. And what makes it particularly dangerous is that it sends a blaring signal to all future nominees that they can now lie to duly elected members of the United States Senate.
Sigh. Is that what it sends? Did they lie? All of them were asked, how do you feel about Roe v. Wade? And they all said the same thing. We respect precedent. Precedent should not be overturned lightly, yada blah, etc. But nobody lied.
In order to secure Supreme Court
See, and this is how lefties act when a decision comes down that they don't like. Then the justices are liars. Then to hell with the Supreme Court. We're going to defy you. Violent protests all over the country.
Confirmations and seats on the Supreme Court. This is
lying,
what we're saying.
Do you think lying at a confirmation hearing is an impeachable offense?
I believe so.
Now, see, that's Chuck Todd of NBC. Notice he didn't say, give me a specific example of who lied. Exactly who said what that you determined to be a lie. He didn't say that. He just said, do you think lying should be an impeachable offense, implying that they, in fact, lied. This is called media bias. It comes in many forms. Failure to challenge her and ask her to give a specific example of who lied and when is an example of media bias.
Okay.
I believe so. I believe lying under oath is an impeachable offense. I believe that violating federal law in not disclosing income from political organizations, as Clarence Thomas did years ago, is also potentially an impeachable offense.
By the way, let's assume for a moment that Clarence Thomas were a liberal justice and voted to affirm Roe v. Wade. Do you think she would care anything at all about political contributions? Do you think she would care anything at all about what Clarence Thomas's wife feels about this issue or that issue? Of course not. They're after Clarence Thomas because Clarence Thomas is a conservative.
I believe that that not recusing from cases that one clearly has family members involved in with.
She's referring to Jenny Thomas, who is a anti-abortion activist. And she claims that Clarence Thomas should have recused himself from cases because of his wife's activity. The decision on whether to recuse yourself from a case lies in the hands of that particular justice. And so Clarence Thomas had every right not to recuse himself. And the only reason she wanted him to recuse himself is because she knows he was going to rule against the position that she holds.
Very deep violations of conflict of interest are also impeachable offenses. And I believe that this is something that should be very seriously considered, including by senators like Joe Manchin and Susan Collins.
Okay. Meanwhile, in Chicago, where there were protests, by the way, there were protests, the largest ones were in LA, Chicago, and New York. All three cities are in states where there is zero chance that the state lawmakers are going to now pass laws to restrict abortion. California, supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the Assembly, they're not going to propose, let alone pass any bill to restrict abortion. New York, very liberal state. Chicago, left wing. They are not going to pass any laws whatsoever to restrict abortion, yet those were states whose cities saw the largest anti-Roe v. Wade overturning protests. Now, the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, in mid-season form.
You read Clarence Thomas concurrence. He said, "Thank you, Clarence Thomas." He thinks that we are going to stand idly by when they take our rights.
Did she say blank Clarence Thomas? The word beginning with F as in fortuitous? I thought she was gay. Now, the lead plaintiff in the same-sex marriage case says, well, this decision could lead to the overturning of the right of interracial marriage. Watch this.
Oh, you know, at this point, the only way we can fight this is by speaking up, by using our voice, by contacting our elected officials at every level of government, whether that's your city council, your state legislature, your Congress members. You need to use your voice. You need to speak up, protest, march, do whatever it is you can do to make your values clear, to demand of your elected officials that they respect and protect your values. keep in mind that this decision, throughout this decision, they talk about history and tradition, and fundamental rights have to have a long history and tradition in our nation. Going back to Justice Thomas, I'd just like to remind him that the right to interracial marriage is only 6 years older than a woman's right to abortion.
What? He's implying that because Roe v. Wade got overturned, the law that struck down interracial marriage will now be reinstated? Sigh. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued that Roe v. Wade was based upon a non-existent right to privacy and that it should have been based upon a principle that's in the Constitution. The principle that's in the Constitution is the 14th Amendment that requires equal protection. There is zero chance that the Supreme Court is now going to somehow introduce or allow laws that forbid interracial marriage. And by the way, Clarence Thomas married to a white woman. So Clarence Thomas is going to sign onto a case that says you cannot marry outside your race. Ridiculous. This is how far they've gone. This is how far they're taking it. Well, this means that they could do anything. And by the way, this business about, well, we have a tradition of upholding laws and Supreme Court decisions. If that's the case, nothing would be overturned. Dred Scott, probably the worst Supreme Court decision ever, determined that blacks were property, chattel property, not human beings, property. That was overturned. Plessy v. Ferguson, that was separate but equal. That was overturned by Brown versus Board of Education. Just because a case is old, just because a precedent is old, that means therefore it ought not be overturned. Ridiculous. These people have gone absolutely mad. And now you're finding all sorts of calls for the assassination of Clarence Thomas on social media. Some of the tweets have been taken down, some of them haven't. Here's one. One person said, "I'm going to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas." There's kind of a law against assassination, against murder, let alone a law against intimidating a Supreme Court justice. Another one tweeted, "Today is a great day to assassinate Clarence Thomas." Another one said, "Someone assassinate Clarence Thomas, already FFs." I'm not even sure what FFs mean, but I'm sure one of you guys will write me and tell me. Can you imagine if anybody said this about, Barack Obama? I'm going to assassinate Barack Obama. Today is a great day to assassinate Barack Obama. Someone assassinate Clarence Thomas already? Oh, I know what FF stands for. For blank sake. I bet you that's what it stands for. And these are not just anonymous people with fairly small Twitter followers. There is a Glasgow, Scotland writer named Neil McKay. He has 24,000 followers. He tweeted this: "If I was a woman in America, I'd burn the Supreme Court to the ground." End of quote. Another one, a senior reporter with something called Engadget, called for violence. He wrote, quote, "Burn down the Supreme Court," close quote. Now, these are the same people who were apoplectic over the alleged insurrection of January 6th. Burn down the Supreme Court. Maxine Waters, "I will defy the court." Where is the investigation into the insurrection that is urged by people who don't like the Supreme Court decision that just now came down? All this threats against Clarence Thomas? By the way, where's Black Lives Matter when you need them? Where's the NAACP when you need them? Also, there are now calls to, once again, stack the court. I give you Stacey Abrams.
Know how the law works, and it is not up to President Biden. This is a choice that has to be made by our both executive and legislative.
By the way, the reason she said this is not up to President Biden is because Biden already said he's not in favor of stacking the court. So, to hell with President Biden too, right?
Legislative branch, but I do think that we have to recognize that there's nothing sacrosanct about 9 members in the United States Supreme Court, but that is a long-term question.
Now, when I ran for governor, Texas passed a so-called fetal heartbeat law, and all of a sudden I was asked over and over again, if I became governor, what would I do about abortion in California? And I said, as I said earlier, there is zero chance that a law restricting abortion would ever reach my desk because we have supermajorities of pro-choice Democrats in both chambers of our legislature. And I said, would you just ask my opponent, Gavin Newsom, just once, at what point during a pregnancy does he think a pregnancy has gone too far to the point where he would outlaw it? 3rd trimester? 2 minutes before birth? No one ever asked him. But this young lady made a great point. The reason that this decision came down is because the extremists on the left, the pro-abortion extremists on the left, are defending a woman's, quote, option to abort a baby up to the point of birth. Watch this.
You know who the left should blame for the overturning of Roe versus Wade? Not the Supreme Court, not Christians, not conservatives, not Republicans, not pro-lifers. The only ones they should be blaming are themselves. It is 100% their fault Roe got overturned. A lot of people, myself included at one point in time, could sympathize with the scared teenager, with the drug addict who had no business bringing a baby into this world. We could understand that. We didn't like it, we didn't agree with it, but we could at least understand it. We went from safe, legal, and rare to up to the moment of birth. We gave you an inch and you took a mile. We drew the line when you decided that you should be able to murder a fully formed infant up to the moment it exits your body. You have no one to blame but yourselves.
And one of the favorite talking points of the pro-abortionists is that, well, people that are opposed to abortion care a great deal about the unborn, but once someone is born, they couldn't give a rip. Really? There are about 3,000 or 4,000 pregnancy resource centers all across the country to provide counseling for women who are pregnant, to provide care after the baby is born, whether that's educational care, whether that's medical care, whether that's counseling. 3,000 to 4,000 pregnancy resource centers all over the country. So people who oppose abortion are not only talking the talk, they're also walking the walk and are helping women who have so-called crisis pregnancies. Hope you enjoyed that video. The full show is available to watch right now on Epoch TV. Just click the link in the description below to learn more, because we've got a country to save.